Airline passenger was killed and dozens others hurt when their plane hit severe turbulence.
It makes me kind of scared to fly.
More than half of Americans think we're in a recession.
I swear, we're about to get banned from Disney. Last summer, I got my cake pops removed.
An insane turbulence incident sparks mass panic about air travel. Americans have some serious misunderstandings about the economy, and a trans TikToker makes an insane video at Disney. All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my daily series where I take on the craziest ideas from the internet and from across our politics from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and sticking around. And if you're a returning viewer, you know what I'm going to say. Don't forget to hit that like button, and please do comment with your thoughts as we go along. I read the comments and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I hate flying. I find it so scary. I get so anxious, but I know at the end of the day that that is mostly illogical. It's mostly an irrational fear, and that flying is actually very safe. But that doesn't change the fact that, like so many Americans, when I see stories about crazy things going wrong and people dying in crashes or accidents, or even accidents where things go wrong and nobody dies, I still get really, really scared. It frightens me. And that's how a lot of people are feeling after a pretty crazy incident just went down on a Singapore Airlines flight. Here's some local news coverage from Fox 5 in New York.
We're also following some developing news overseas where an airline passenger was killed and dozens others hurt when their plane hit severe turbulence.
Yeah, the Singapore Airlines flight was headed from London to Singapore, and it was over the Indian Ocean when this incident happened. The plane was diverted to Bangkok, Thailand. Richard Giacobas is live at Newark Airport for us with more on what happened and how travelers are reacting today. Richard.
Chris Bianco, we've talked about this before, air turbulence and the danger it poses. This a tragic incident on board that flight, like you said, that originated from London and was heading towards Singapore. It was about an hour and a half before landing on that Singapore Airlines flight when the Boeing 777 was hit with severe turbulence. It forced the jet to make an emergency landing in Bangkok, according to officials. The flight fell into an air pocket while the cabin crew was serving breakfast to the 211 passengers on board. That's when the turbulence started. This happening right over the Indian Ocean. Officials say a 73-year-old man from the UK died during the incident, likely due to a heart attack. 7 passengers were critically injured with suffering head injury.
So obviously this is heartbreaking stuff, and scary stories about air travel always make news. But the reason this one is going particularly viral is there's this really shocking footage that we get to see of the plane in absolute disarray and disorder after this turbulence. It's not from the actual, time when people were shaking and scared, but it's from afterwards, and you can just see this plane is just totally a mess in the insides. Now, thankfully, with the way these planes are built, the stuff that is actually important to keep the plane running is not really vulnerable to turbulence and is not, it's deep inside the plane, right? It's not just right above where everything's falling out or anything like that. But it's still really dangerous to have this stuff flying everywhere, and that's why people get hurt. And it's also why you should always keep your seatbelt on, even when the seatbelt sign isn't on, if you're just in your seat, just in case there's some unexpected turbulence, because that's one of the reasons people get hurt is if they don't have their seatbelt on. Now, you would really hope that we could have media coverage of this stuff that is unbiased and not really political, right? It's air travel. What's the partisan narrative here? You would be wrong, though. Liberal media outlet after liberal media outlet tried to make this about climate change. Climate change and turbulence. Experts weigh in after death on Singapore Airlines. Climate change is making turbulence worse, although deaths are still rare, experts say. Singapore Airlines death. Is climate change making air turbulence worse? These are just a couple of the many headlines that attempted to link air turbulence to climate change, just like they attempt to link every possible thing that goes wrong these days to climate change so they can push their green policy agenda. There's just one problem. It isn't true. Air turbulence hasn't gotten worse. Actual data from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board shows no change in turbulence-related incidents over a 30-year period between 1990 and 2018. So all this media coverage, even if it contains nuances somewhere in the body of the article, these headlines alone really serve to mislead people. And I actually think the entire way that media covers these incidents serves to mislead people overall about the dangers associated with air travel. For example, that news station that I played earlier talked to random travelers and asked them, and some of them seemed quite scared.
This incident coming just days before the busy Memorial Day travel weekend. We spoke to passengers here at Newark International Airport, some telling us news like this makes them feel a little uneasy boarding a plane. Some say it doesn't faze them.
It makes me kind of scared to fly, but I still do it because I like traveling.
I just try to relax, but I do kind of freak out.
When it does shake a little bit, who's really in control, and the qualifications of the pilots, and that can be a concern.
I remember when I came to New York when I was 17, not in New York, sorry, Washington, and there was a lot of turbulence, and it was quite scary because the plane was dipping up and down.
But I know the plane's going to be okay. Usually turbulence doesn't mean the plane's going to crash or fall out of the sky.
So on an emotional level, I can understand why people feel like this. And if you go to the comment section on any post or any video about this, you'll just find person after person saying that after all the viral clips they've seen over the last year or two, they are scared to fly. Emotionally, I get it, right? I feel the same anxiety and nerves. But it is simply not justified to have any level of increased concern or anxiety about the safety of air travel based on the actual statistics and data. In fact, commercial aviation in 2023 was the safest on record by several measures, according to the International Air Transport Association's 2023 Annual Safety Report. The fatality risk improved to a record low of 0.03 per million flights in 2023. On average, a person would have to travel by air every day for 103,000 years to experience a fatal accident at this level of safety in commercial aviation. The accident rate improved to a record low of 0.8 per million sectors in 2023. This implies there was, on average, one accident for every 1.26 million flights. So while if you're just looking at viral videos, it can seem like things are getting more dangerous when it comes to air travel, that's just not the case. I can see why people feel that way. I mean, just like a week ago, I saw a crazy video of a plane catching fire in the middle of the air, and it makes me nervous too, guys. It really does. But the increased awareness of this stuff is really more a function of the rise of social media and everybody having a camera in their pocket at all times than it is in some decrease in safety. On the contrary, air travel is incredibly safe and only gotten safer in recent years. And if we're worried about getting hurt while traveling, air travel is not what we need to be worried about. Look at this data from 2019. It shows you the passenger injury rates per 100 million passenger miles for 2019. Motorcycles is by far and away the most common form in which people are injured, followed by cars and trucks, and bus transit. Air travel is all the way at the bottom. And this might actually be an understatement because the data for motorcycle and passenger car truck injuries only includes injuries that occurred on highways. Moral of this story, air travel is still really freaking safe. And people need to keep these facts in mind when they're viewing these understandably scary viral videos, and the media needs to do a better job of, one, not politicizing the coverage of these incidents in strange ways, and two, reminding people about the facts and the statistics that actually are going on here beyond just outlier viral incidents. But that's just my take on this. Let me know in the comments below. Do you feel safe flying these days? Are you worried when you see these viral videos? And were you aware of these statistics that I shared with you today? And now, keeping with our theme for today, we're going to talk about the misunderstandings many Americans seem to have about the current state of the US economy. A new Harris poll conducted for The Guardian asked Americans about their perception of the US economy and then compared it to the actual facts about the current state of the economy. And it found a really wide gulf between perception and reality. We're going to break that down and explore why that might be. We're going to watch some coverage from MSNBC breaking down this poll, and up first, Americans seem to think we're in a recession.
More than half of Americans think we're in a recession. It is divided somewhat by party. More Republicans, 67%, feel it than Democrats, but even Democrats, 49% feel it. We've seen this kind of divergence before, and interestingly enough, it flips around with every election, not surprisingly. But here's the reality. The reality is the economy has basically been growing since COVID, except for a very small downturn here. Under Joe Biden, it's grown by 2.8% a year, which is actually slightly faster than it was growing under Trump, even before COVID hit. And so you can see every quarter we've had reasonably strong economic growth. So why people feel this is really quite a mystery.
So I actually don't think it's a mystery at all. I think the most simple explanation for this is that most Americans probably don't know the technical economic definition for a recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth. When they hear recession, they're really just thinking that means the economy is bad right now. Now, why would Americans think the economy is bad if it's still growing and it's not actually shrinking in a recession? There are many reasons that could be, but for me, the biggest one is prices, the cost of living, and inflation. Everything has gotten more expensive, and inflation-adjusted wages are lower today than they were when Biden took office. I think that's why Americans think we might be in a recession, because they don't know the technical definition of that term, and they just don't feel like the economy is doing well. It might be technically incorrect, but I can understand why people would feel that way. Americans also seem confused about the state of unemployment in our economy right now.
50% of Americans think unemployment is at a 50-year high. 50% think it's at a 50-year high. Unemployment is actually at a 50-year low. It's really amazing.
So this one has me scratching my head a little bit, because if you follow the economic reports, you would know that unemployment is nowhere near a 50-year high. The unemployment rate is quite low, and it's actually quite good. It was before COVID, and then it really went up during COVID, and now it's back down to where it was, or even a little lower, actually. Americans just seem uninformed on this one, and that's not great. It is a little more complicated, though, than just saying, well, the unemployment rate is low, so the jobs market is doing amazing. The unemployment rate only measures people who are actively seeking work. So when you have a lot of people who are disillusioned and haven't been able to find the right job or a job at all and have dropped out of the labor force and just stopped looking for work, well, those people aren't counted. They don't show up in the unemployment rate. So that's why even though you have a extremely low unemployment rate, you might still feel like there's lots of people who can't find work. There's also underemployment, right? People might have a job, but it's a part-time job, or it's not giving them enough hours, or it's not in the thing their degree is in. And there are other complicating factors here. So the unemployment rate is really strong. There's just no denying that, but the full picture of the jobs market is more complex than that. Now, there's another piece of this poll where Americans seem kind of out of the loop with what's going on in the stock market.
Another issue is stocks. Half of Americans think stocks are down this year. Stocks are actually up 11% this year. They're up 45% since Joe Biden took office. Complete disconnect in people's minds between perception and reality of the stock market.
Again, I'm not really sure what's going on here, but Americans are out of the loop on this one. I will say, I feel like most people don't follow the stock market on a daily basis, right? Because most people's stock investments are long-term, right? They're 401k, that kind of thing. So it doesn't really depend on the day-to-day fluctuations. But still, to not even know whether they're up or down this year is a little bit surprising. Now, for me, the most interesting part of this poll was when it asked people about what's going on with inflation. And it found that across the political spectrum, most respondents believe that inflation is increasing. However, inflation is actually somewhat stable right now and has decreased significantly from the peak that it reached in 2022. Now, why would this be? I actually think there's an incredibly simple explanation for this one. Americans don't quite understand what we're referring to when we use the word inflation. In economics, that term refers to the inflation rate. So, for example, in June of 2022, inflation was 9.1%. What that means is that over a 1-year period, that's the average rate that consumer prices went up. Now, in April of 2024, inflation is at 3.4%, which just means that's the rate at which prices went up over the last year. But when Americans hear inflation, they just think prices. And so inflation going up, they think that means prices going up. And prices are still going up because the rate of inflation is still positive and it's still well above the normal rate of 2%. So inflation has decreased because the rate of increase has decreased and fallen. Prices are still going up, which is why Americans would answer a poll and say inflation is going up. They don't quite understand what's precisely meant by that term. What they mean to be saying is that prices are going up. And that is an accurate perception and one that Americans know all too well because they see it all around them at the grocery store and at the gas station. And I think liberal media and the Biden administration need to be really careful about sneering at these Americans and saying, fact check, false, inflation is going down. Because ultimately it's like, congrats, prices are still going up just at a slower rate. That's not exactly a record to brag about. Anyway, though, I just want my viewers to be informed about the nuances of the state of the economy right now so that they're not in the dark like this. They're not out of the loop between what's technically happening and their general perceptions of things that may or may not be accurate. What do you think? Were you surprised to learn any of the things I just reported on? Let me know in the comments. And now, it's time for DELULU Epidemic, my segment where I spotlight people who are letting their stupid show.
Your DELULU is showing babe.
Today, this Socialist magazine just got owned for its incredibly dumb and hypocritical criticism of Walmart. The Socialist magazine Jacobin tweeted, infamous for its starvation wages, Walmart just posted staggering first quarter profits. The surge is a result of its dramatic shift towards catering to affluent shoppers, while its full-time workers continue to rely on Medicaid and food stamps. So does Walmart really pay starvation wages? That's a pretty common talking point you hear from economic lefties. But it's not really true. As the community note appended to this tweet pointed out, Walmart non-corporate associates' average hourly wage is now $17.50 an hour with full-time benefits. I'm old enough to remember 5 minutes ago when the kinds of socialists and progressives who work for Jacobin were arguing that we need a $15 minimum wage because we need a livable wage. And now they're arguing that $17.50 an hour plus benefits is starvation wages. The cost of living has gone up in the last couple of years, but not by that much. Now, the truly hilarious thing that was pointed out to dunk on Jacobin for this tweet was that the Socialist magazine pays their writers what could be called, under their logic, starvation wages. According to the website whopayswriters.com, the most recent entries report that Jacobin pays its writers about 7 cents a word. As a writer, and as somebody who freelances for publications, I can tell you that that is a very low rate and a very low wage. Some might even call it a starvation wage. So Jacobin, maybe get your own stuff together before criticizing Walmart and other places with bad faith attacks. Because right now, your DELULU is showing. Up next, it's time for Brad vs. TikTok, my daily segment where I react to the craziest videos going viral on the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slug slugs.
Don't forget to subscribe and stick around, and hit that like button as we go along. Now, this trans TikToker is getting dragged for talking about their sex change at Disney surrounded by children. Yes, seriously.
I'm gonna get banned from Disney. I swear, we're about to get banned from Disney. Last summer, I got my cake pops removed, and the plan up until recently was to get my marshmallow wand reconfigured into a marshmallow tunnel. Unfortunately, a few weeks ago, I noticed some hair regrowth on my marshmallow wand. That's bad because the outside of the wand is what becomes the inside of the tunnel, so you don't want hair growing there, or else it's very uncomfortable. So I talked to my surgeon and he said that it would be best to postpone the procedure until after hair removal is complete. This is obviously disappointing because I was really excited to have a marshmallow tunnel sooner. That being said, it is still happening. We're just not sure when it's happening. Hair removal is a fickle thing and it's really hard to predict when it will finish. But my hair removal technician thinks it will be before the end of the year. So, fingers crossed. Oh, go. Want some? My mom's here, by the way. The marshmallow tunnel.
You should be banned from Disney for life. You know a TikTok is DELULU when even the comment section on this app, which skews super left-wing and is full of super woke young people, is having none of it. Someone send this to Disneyland's CEO. Is there a reason you couldn't wait till you weren't at Disney? not at Disneyland. But why at Disney? Check bro's phone immediately. The fact that you can hear the kids right behind you. This is so disturbing. Like, one, I really don't understand the need to talk about your stuff down there and everything you're getting done. But if you want to, I guess it's your platform. Do what you want. But the food thing, describing it with the food, is always going to make me slightly nauseous. And then eating that food right after is just, like, why? The real problem here is the location and the venue and the choice to make this video at this time in this location. At a place meant for children where you're surrounded by children and they're so close that you can literally hear them in the background, you chose to talk about what's down there. That is disturbing. It is an enormous error in judgment, and it is frankly a massive, massive red flag. It's also so frustrating because for years, gay people and the LGBT community were unfairly maligned with stereotypes, statistically inaccurate stereotypes, that we were more likely to be harmful towards minors. And now we have people presenting a face to millions of people online from that community who actually are harmful to minors. Oh my God, you're just deleting the progress we've made every time you post. But don't worry guys, this creator realized what they did was wrong and quickly apologized. Just kidding.
Apology is that I didn't make more videos in Disney. I wish I had filmed myself more. I can see how much of a nerve that video touched, more than I expected.
Let me get this gay real quick, Lily Tino. Now, instead of taking into consideration, maybe I crossed the line, maybe I was a little out of pocket with that video, you decided to double down while simultaneously admitting you're living for the rage bait, no matter whether it affects the trans community in a positive or negative way. I'm not ready for this. Let's continue.
I was listening. No one was listening. 2, even if they were listening, you talking about cake pops and marshmallow wands. Like, you'd have to kind of know a little bit more to really understand what I was saying. But let's say you did understand what I was saying and you were listening, which no one was. It's no different than talking about a hip replacement or
speaking directly to children about gender reassignment surgery. Your genitals is on the same playing field as a hip replacement surgery now. What? And don't act like this video was not directed towards a younger audience. If it was directed towards adults like you said it was, speak to adults like adults. You shouldn't have to use cake pops. And I would be willing to bet money that your age restrictions, 18 and over, is not set up on your videos.
I think the reaction is actually kind of funny. It's kind of funny. Disney was not the time and place I pinned. No, it actually was, Andrea. Because I was in Disneyland and I wanted to talk about it. That makes it the time.
You know, Lily, I'm glad you think it's funny. I wonder if you're still going to think it's funny when LGBTQ acceptance continues to decline. Of course, it's how I feel. I felt like filming it there. I felt like that was a time and place that I wanted to speak about it. Of course, all about you, without taking into consideration the people around you and how it might affect them. And that's not a red flag to you? You're surrounded by children and that's what you decide to talk about?
Queer people are allowed to exist in Disneyland and talk about being queer. If you think that's a problem, then you have a problem.
The problem is not people existing. The problem is the location you decided to film the video, the content of the video, and who the video was directed towards. That is the problem. And if you don't see that, I don't know what to tell you.
That video was from my friend AJ Sanchez, who is a common sense gay TikToker. I'll link to his YouTube channel and his TikTok in the description so you can go check him out and his content. He does a great job calling out this stuff, and he was just spot on there. It's not about queer people existing in public. It's about talking about your junk in front of kids in creepy ways clearly meant to be interesting or understandable to children. All of that is a massive red flag. And nobody's bigoted because they're calling that out. They're concerned, and understandably so. So yes, this person should be banned from Disney, and frankly, should probably be investigated beyond that. All right, guys, I gotta leave it there for TikTok for now, because that one genuinely really bothered me, especially because that kind of thing can go viral and reach millions of people on TikTok, no problem. But people like me constantly get our videos taken down and are reported and banned and censored for speaking common sense. That's the math that TikTok is doing. The math. Ugh. All right, so we'll leave it there for now. Please hit that like button to reward my suffering, and let me know in the comments. What's your thoughts on this video, especially if you're a parent? Please, I want to hear from you. And now I'll read a couple of your comments before we wrap up today's show. One person says, I feel unsafe generally translates writes to I can't handle opposing opinions. You, sir, are absolutely correct. Anytime unsafe is used in a non-literal or non-physical sense, I have a huge problem with it. Words and ideas don't make you physically unsafe, and the conflation of the two is deeply dangerous because it puts us down a path towards censorship and towards violence. If words or ideas make you unsafe and are violent, then violence is justified as self-defense. That's why we can't coddle or tolerate that perverse thinking. Another person says, how ironic that one of the most humorless and angry organizations on earth is called GLAAD. No, I never thought about that, but you are right. Another person said, Brad pointed out a common theme among the DELULU bunch. They truly don't understand how things work, but they have the same approach at trying to convince everyone who tries to explain reality to them. They just repeat the same thing over and over and say it louder, thinking that will work. It's all performative at this point. I love that term, the DELULU bunch. And I actually think what bothers me the most about those people is their lack of curiosity. I myself am a very curious person, so I actually like to listen to things that I disagree with so I can kind of challenge myself and expand my mind. But they seem incredibly closed off. That's why I can almost never get anyone from the left to debate me or even discuss things with me in any sort of capacity. And I really don't respect that. Another person writes, Brad versus everyone gets longer by the day because the world gets more insane by the day. You know, it's funny you say that because when I started this series, what I had in mind was about a 15 to 20 minute episode every day. But if you've been watching consistently, you'll notice that a lot of the episodes have run 30 minutes or more. And that's funny because I was worried I wouldn't have enough content. I wouldn't have enough things to talk about. And I've actually most days had the opposite problem. I've had too many things to talk about. Frankly, the episodes could have run longer than 30 minutes if I had more time in the day to edit it. But if it got even longer than that, I probably wouldn't be able to get it out by 6 p.m. And I can only do so many hours of this stuff before going to Lulu myself. So yeah, things are going great. But hey, the upside is you get to spend more time with me every day. And who couldn't want that? All right, everybody, that's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in, and please, if you're new here, consider subscribing and sticking around. We don't bite. It's a pretty cool community. Everybody's pretty nice and pretty thoughtful, or at least most of you are. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts below. With that, we'll talk again tomorrow.